Live streaming start like ado.
Acha.
Nishi start like lafudu.
Acha dekh. Good afternoon. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to this special talk organized by the Dimasa Scholars League on the occasion of Joya Thaosen's birth anniversary. The talk, titled as Women's Contribution Towards Social Change in Assam, is our attempt to acknowledge the role of women as an agent of social change. It felt appropriate to start this conversation on the agency of women on the event of Joya Thaosen's birth anniversary, who was a young freedom fighter who lost her life fighting against the colonial power in 1940s. Our esteemed speaker, Dr. Ritu Thaosen, will give us a talk on the life of this great personality. We also have amongst us Dr. Nami Sharma, who will introduce us to another impressive individual, Chandra Prabha Saikyani, who was a feminist, a writer, an activist, and also a freedom fighter from Assam. And finally, our third speaker, Ms. Jayashree Naiding, will talk on her own experience in forestry services to give us a picture of how women have brought transformation to the society through their work with nature. Never before, I feel it has become more important to reflect on women's position in society. The vulnerability as well as the resilience of women has become even more evident in these unprecedented times. And as individuals and academics, we feel that it is our responsibility to question and understand the position of women. So participation of women in freedom struggle was perhaps one of the earliest factors in modern India that contributed towards structural changes in the position of women. Right? So today we shall therefore look into the past to understand the differences that women have made and are making against all odds in our society. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Dr. Ritu Thaosen, who will talk about the life of Joya Thaosen. Dr. Thaosen is currently the head as well as associate professor in the Department of History, Cotton University. She has taught in Diffu College from 1992 till 2003 before joining Cotton University. She has published her works in journals like Man in India and The Mirror, and her research interest includes society and culture in Northeast India. In her free time, ma'am enjoys listening to music. So without any further ado, I request Ritu Thaosen ma'am to take over and start her session.
Good afternoon, everybody here. And thank you, Hamidi Hajar. First of all, I extend my thanks to the Dimasa Scholars League for inviting me to speak on this occasion in this through this virtual platform. So, ang krip Dimasa ke wangani hamjoma khashoma yaupaladu. So as I have been asked to speak in English, I think I'll speak in English only. So regarding Joya Thaosen. So in fact, if when Pami asked me to speak on this, about her also, like even me, I was thinking like how much I can speak about her, because if frankly speaking, in fact, as students or as a student also, in fact, I actually did not hear about Joya Thaosen, nor did I read about Joya Thaosen. So it was just about maybe 15 to 20 years back that it is through some students organization, the Master Students Organization, that I came to know about Joya Thaosen and her contribution during the freedom struggle. So, but I would like to again thank M. Kemprai, in fact, who in fact came up on the life of, he came up with her biography, a short biography on Joya Thaosen. It's entitled, written in Assamese and entitled Sengyajik Joya Thaosen, Mukti Kamina Shadhinata Jujaru, published in 2003. So in this work has also been referred to by later writers like Mita Deka. Sorry, she has mentioned his source in her book, Women's Agency and Social Change, Assam and Beyond, which was published also in 2013. Then we have works of Mulan Lashkar, more in the form of a novel. He has written, that's also in Assamese, it is Jaraji Ron Kuolit Joya, so which was also published in 2016. So in fact, it is with the help of these few works that in fact I'm speaking on Joya Thaosen. So to speak about early life of Joya Thaosen, she was born in the year 1925 in Jorai Bhatari village in Dimahasao. But from the sources that I've gathered, it's found that she, in fact, since her parents died when she was still an infant, maybe, like, so she grew up under, in fact, she was looked after by her maternal uncle and aunt. So that's when we find in her struggle for freedom also, you find that she was, in fact, supported by her uncle Arjun Langtasa, who is known as Arjun Langtasa. So when Joya Thaosen, she as she grew up, in fact, she became aware of the like how her people, or maybe people in colonial during the colonial era, so how the people, in fact, they had to say, in fact, they had to donate grains, or they were forced to donate amount of grains to the war granary during the Second World War. So, this type of, in fact, maybe forces of colonial administration, in fact, which may have, in fact, also inspired, in fact, which in fact also like made her like retaliate against the colonial forces. So what we come to know that is like how she may have been influenced, in fact. So we mainly know Joya Thaosen that, in fact, that she had, she formed the Dimasa regiment with the help of her uncle, and another name we find is Jautedao Kemprai. So Jautedao Kemprai, so they formed the Dimasa regiment, and and in fact before that also, it is found that Joya also organized the people, and in many places, in fact, the people raised their voices. So there were meetings, it is said, meetings were organized in such places as Khepre, then Champari Disha, then Pirik, then Amru Disha, it is mentioned. So, these are the places, or there are some more places maybe where she, in fact, meetings were organized against the colonial rule. So then in 1944, we hear that Joya, in fact, she even lent her support to the Rani Jhansi regiment of the Azad Hind Fauj. So in and we know that Rani Jhansi, actually this Rani Jhansi regiment was formed in 1943 in Singapore with about 20 young women, like which later eventually it increased to 1,500. But then Joya, in fact, on her 7th April, she was, in fact, she was attacked. I'm not saying only she, Joya and her regiment, they were attacked by the British forces at Kiren Kowai. So the journey, if you think in those days, how Joya must have with her Dimasa regiment. So Dimasa regiment, it says that it numbered around 53. So according to what I have read in Mulan Lashkar's work, that there were around 53, and there were maybe even women also, but we do not know much about other women. So the Dimasa regiment, which marched towards, you find, towards Kohima, and faced the British forces in 1944. In fact, in the encounter that ensued, Joya was shot at, and she died there. And but in fact, before even she was killed, she also was successfully shot at 4 British soldiers. So while her uncle, however, Arjun Langtasa, was injured. Now, this is in fact a very short detail that I get of Joya. But again, if you see that how in those days, when communication was, you find when communication was poor, and how did they in fact travel through those difficult terrains, through the difficult terrains, through the hills. So, and before that, how could Joya even have heard about the Azad Hind Fauj? So, one source mentions that she heard of her uncle Arjun Langtasa heard the speech of Subhash Chandra Bose on the radio, and which Joya must also have heard. So all these things maybe in fact inspired her. Now we know that yes, what Joya in fact she had done, I mean what she had tried, it may be, I mean her attempt may not have been very successful, but no doubt she demonstrated or she exhibited a strong nationalist spirit. So a strong nationalist spirit is what we notice. And we may say that, yes, she had the support of her people at that time when she marched towards Kohima. But we will also have to admit that she must have had, it was by sheer will of, you can say, I mean, she had, I mean, that will, or the force of will, which in fact led her to join, in fact, or organize this regiment, and how she led, I mean, the people, I mean, marching to Kohima against the British forces. Then what was also again intriguing when I read one of in the sources, that it is mentioned that Joya's family and even her village, they were ostracized. But of course, why it was ostracized, it is not known. Now, most of our Dimasa scholars, they would understand, or they could give their own understanding. I mean, from their own perspectives, they can in fact study why Joya Thaosen's family was ostracized and why her village was ostracized. Or if she would have not died during the battle, maybe she would also have been ostracized. So what does it show? That though they had in fact joined this, I mean, they were not in fact afraid to fight the British forces. I mean, all these they did within the patriarchal norms, whatever they did, because if you read in the different phases of the freedom struggle, like contribution of women, role of women in Assam, if you read in various, we find in phases, we find that it's different. Say maybe in the earlier phases, even if we say that they joined the freedom struggle, it may be that they were not in the open. So sometimes they were within the 4 walls of the house, but they were still, they were supporting the freedom struggle. So maybe they helped in hiding the weapons of those nationalists. I mean, then they sometimes would cook food for those people who would come to them. So in that way also they struggled. But you find in something like Joya, like how we say that she was, her family was ostracized and all that. Something like similar taste we also hear in other places of India also, like say one freedom fighter, Manmohini Jutsi Sahgal. She also writes about a woman that after she joined a demonstration, uh, and when, I mean, she joined a demonstration and she was arrested by the police. In fact, her husband did not want her to come back home. So he said that he was very honored that the wife, I mean, was arrested, because she had she was, in fact, she had supported, no doubt, the freedom struggle. She was there, but she had left the house without informing him. So he did not want her back. So we also find that women were in such, I mean, even under such circumstances, that women in India, in fact, they joined the freedom struggle. So here we find that Joya has, we speak that yes, Joya was there during the Azad Hind Fauj, but why was she ostracized? I mean, not she, I've said that her family and even the village was ostracized. So now those who are quite familiar, we are already familiar with our, say, our society, in the Dimasa society. We all know about our the clan system, and sometimes our, what we say, the which is sometimes a bit conservative also. So it could be that she went out of the house and her family, so maybe the others in the villages, they look down on it. So these are the people who went out of the village, who mixed with others. So you find, so women in India, when they struggled, so you find under different circumstances, you find they had to, in fact, they joined the freedom struggle. Now today, like, how would we say like to say remember Joya, or how would we like to commemorate, I mean memories of Joya Thaosen? So like you see, already I think if you, many are, I mean, they don't know that, say, in the name of Joya Thaosen, we already have hostel here, girls hostel here it was last year, before that it was inaugurated. So in the memory of Joya Thaosen. So most of the time we find that their memory, how they are like, how can we, I mean, commemorate. Now today we are starting with, in fact, in the name of Joya, we have already started also this talk. Then some may want, or the people from the community may want, that her statue may be erected. Or why I'm saying this is because similarly we find regarding Sambudan Phonglo. So you know that Sambudan Phonglo, today we know more about Sambudan Phonglo. So like Sambudan Phonglo statue we find in the middle of Haflong town. Then we have like even certain area in Haflong known as Sambudan Raji. So we have even in the name of Sambudan, we have Sambudan Phonglo school. Then we have Sambudan Phonglo Junior College. So so would the Dimasas want event like in the memory of Joya Thaosen, I mean, to commemorate her memory, such I mean, in such a way. So so it is, I mean, for the people to think in what way they would like, but at the same time, I think our young scholars. So I think it is for the young scholars, I think, who can actually take up more research regarding Joya Thaosen, because we find that in Northeast India, as it is, in Northeast India, we always say that our history, it's not known to we find outside the Northeast much. So in the same way, again, we'll say not only the history of Northeast India. Now, if you come to the regarding women, so we say that we do not know much about women who had struggled during the freedom struggle. In Assam, no doubt, when we read the history of Assam, we have a lot of names, as we have said, like Konaklota was also a contemporary of Joya Thaosen. So we are all familiar with Konaklota. So how she was also shot at during the Quit India movement at Bhopur in 1942. So today, all same way, we have Konaklota statue. Then, like the Konaklatas, the name of Konaklata, we have school, like several things in that way. But as we have said, in history of Assam, such names are known. But among the Dimasas, we hardly have the name of any freedom struggle. I mean, people who have struggled during during the freedom struggle. So now, and leave aside women. So Joya Thaosen's name, in fact, now today we are familiar as the women who, in fact, joined the Azad, in fact, land solidarity, you can say, during 1944. So in that way, we remember Joya Thaosen today. So other than that, as I have said, it is with very limited sources that I could speak on Joya Thaosen. So in fact, as I have said, that I would leave to the young scholars today to come up with more research on Joya Thaosen. But for now, I think today I would like to conclude here regarding Joya Thaosen, because we have more speakers. So thank you all for your patience here.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I think your talk has highlighted very beautifully some of the two issues that is always in the periphery of mainstream history, women and Northeast India. And it's extremely interesting to learn how a young girl, barely out of her teenagehood, how she overcame so many social hurdles to participate in the freedom struggle. And I think you've raised, the most important point that you've raised is how do we preserve her memory, and what is our responsibility here as researchers, as academics, to carry forward that legacy of hers. So thank you so much, ma'am. Now we'll move on to the next speaker, who will also continue to talk about how women have engaged with, in the past, with politics and law. So briefly, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Nami Sharma, who is currently teaching in the Department of Social Work in Tezpur University. So prior to teaching, she was working in rural Madhya Pradesh and Uttarakhand. She has worked with various communities and tribes native to those two states, especially in issues pertaining to nature conservation, traditional knowledge systems, and forest rights. Her PhD work was on environmental ethics of the Monpas in Arunachal Pradesh, and her research interest also includes those related to health and nutrition. She enjoys watching movies and taking walks with her rescue dog. So I welcome Nami to take over the session.
Thank you so much, Pami. Am I audible?
Perfect.
Okay. And thank you thank you Dimasa Scholars League for giving me this opportunity to speak in this platform. And also thanks to Ritu Thaosen ma'am for bringing, character like Joya Thaosen out in the open, because I myself was not aware of her And I'm sure that more work needs to be done on such, women leaders. So today I'm here, I'll speak about a similar, very empowered and a very strong woman who is called Chandraprabha Saikyani. And Chandraprabha Saikyani, if I compare her to Joya Thaosen, I think around the same age also, that she did some very radical things, which is unthinkable of even in today's day and age. And what actually, drew us to Chandraprabha Saikyani is her life story in itself. So there has been, literature on Chandraprabha Saikyani. There are 4 main biographies which are written on her. So I have sourced the material from 2 of those biographies. And there is also a very popular, fictional novel based on her life, which is called Obhijatri. And this book is written by Nirupama Borgohain. And this book was translated to English as well. So, after listening to the talk, perhaps if you want to, delve more into the life of Chandraprabha Saikyani, we can go and read Obhijatri. So Chandraprabha Saikyani, initially, honestly telling you, I also had very, very limited idea about her life. I mean, she, over a period of time, in the last few years, we have a center of women's studies under her name in Teshpur University. So in the last few years, there has been a lot of, discussion and deliberations on her life. So that definitely brings her to the forefront, but still there is very limited writings or limited, understanding on how she had led her life and how she actually emerged as a leader, a women's leader in 100 years back, like in around 1990. So to begin talking about her, I'd like to, give you a glimpse of how her childhood was. So she was born in 1901. Okay, so 1901, 16th of March. She was born in Kamrup district in this village called Doihingiri. Now, Doihingiri is in the lower Assam, and this is the name of the Bajali, I'm forgetting the name of the tehsil, Bajali tehsil. So in the Bajali tehsil, this village was located, Doihingiri, and her father's name was Rotiram Muzumdar. Now, Rotiram Muzumdar was the village headman. He was the Gaonbura of that village, and her mother was Ganga Priya. Now, why it is important to talk about her parents also, because in those days, a girl child used to get married at the age of 12 or 13 immediately after attaining puberty. If the girl child belongs to a higher caste or the Brahmin household, she used to get married even before attaining puberty. So once she attains puberty, she's labeled as being a old woman, or she's past of age, of marriageable age. So in those days, her father, Rotiram Mazumdar, and Ganga Priya, though Ganga Priya herself was never educated, but they realized the importance of educating their girl children, So they had 11 children, and she was the 7th of all 11. And a lot of them had, couldn't complete their childhood also, they died. But eventually Rotiram and Ganga Priya were left with, like, they married off 2 girls, and they left with 3 children, 1 boy and 2 girls. And the eldest one was Chandraprabha. Chandraprabha was earlier known as Chandrapriya actually. But later we'll also see, how her name also changes from Chandrapriya Mazumdar to Chandraprabha Saikyani. That itself is very interesting. Now, her younger brother was Dharmeshwar and the younger sister was Rameshwari. Now, what happened was, in that village, there was no school for girls, as usual. So what her father did was, she had an aunt, her mother's younger sister, who stayed in Bhaluki Gaon, which was around, a few kilometers away from their village in Tihu. So her father decided to take the children to Bhaluki Gaon, to their aunt's place, so that they can attain the primary education staying at the aunt's place. At Bhaluki Gaon, there was a girls' primary school. It's very interesting to note here that this school was started by Chandraprabha's maternal grandfather. So, though Ganga Priya was not educated herself, you understand how Ganga Priya, like Chandraprabha's mother also, saw importance in educating her daughter. Her father was a scholar of kinds, and he had started that school in that village. So these three children, they go to this village, Bhaluki Gaon, to get their primary education. Now they get their primary education. There is no middle school in that village. So they have no other option but to come back to Doihingiri. There was another, middle school, which was around a few kilometers away in this village called Kothalmori in near Doihingiri. Now that middle school was only for boys. But the father went and negotiated with the headmaster, and the headmaster said that, okay, the girls can come because they're very brilliant. Everybody knows that. So they started going to attending that middle school, and there were only two girls. Of course, the father, Rotiram Mazumdar, drew a lot of criticisms from the society at that time, but he stood ground and they attended the school. Now what happened? The seasonal floods came, and it was very difficult for these young girls who had attained puberty also. They were in the doorstep of adolescence to continue attending the middle school. So they left it. And they come back to, but still there was this, by that time, there was this primary school only for boys, which was coming up in Doihingiri. Now in that primary school, there was this headmaster who played a very important role in Chandraprabha's life. So he told them that you do one thing, both you girls keep coming to the school. Anyways, it is a primary level school, but you keep coming to the school and I will take sessions, for your middle school classes. So they kept going. Now around 1913, Chandraprabha was hardly 13 years old, 12, 13 years old. She was already, she had faced so much of trouble because there was not a single girls' school in the vicinity, in the village. So she decided to start one school. So she mobilized funds and she mobilized the community. And that small girl, 13-year-old, she goes and tries to convince people the importance of girl child education and starts this school. Gradually, girl children start coming, the number increases. And eventually, the school is taken over by Borpeta Local Education Board, and she gets a salary also of 6 rupees at that time. So that time what happens was the school inspector used to visit the school after regular intervals. So in 1914, there was a sub-school inspector called Nilokanto Borua. Now Nilokanto Borua, he went to the school and he saw this very young, bubbly girl and taking classes along with her younger sister and he got to know that she started at school all by herself. So what he comes and meets her father and he says that this girl has a long way to go and we have a mission school in Nagaon district. So why doesn't she go there and take training? Now this mission school, it was started by these American missionaries in early part of 19th century. Now there were 3 mission schools in the entire state of Assam. One was in Sipsagar, one was in Nagaon. Earlier, this Nagaon mission school was in Tezpur, but it was shifted to Nagaon. And the third was, I think, if I'm not wrong, in Guwahati, but I'm not sure about the third one as yet. So she comes in, and in the Nagaon mission school, particularly, the training was towards developing teachers. So Nilokanto Borua secured a scholarship for this young girl, and also told her father that she must go and stay there. It's a boarding school. Now her father was very reluctant to send her alone. So however, they managed and both the sisters got admission in the mission school. Now here the second phase of her life begins. So she's exposed, she's taught by American missionaries and also teachers who were trained in Calcutta. So these teachers gave her a glimpse of an alternate reality which she was never exposed to, an alternate reality where women should come forth and they should get into discussions or they should be educated and they should participate equally in the socio-cultural and political life. So this was something very new to her and this appealed to her. So there was this nun, Sister Long, who used to go on long walks. So she used to take these girls out and they used to go for long walks, which was not such a common, thing back in her village. Women do not go out so easily and freely after attaining puberty as the men. So this was going on, the education, the training, but training was, multifarious. It started from table etiquettes to how to speak eloquently, and how to read and everything, so it was a multifaceted training which was going on, and also discussions. But at the same time, she observed that this was the end of the day a missionary society, and its primary aim was also evangelical, mission. So she realized that there was a slight discrimination which was meted out to the Hindu girls versus the Christian girls. So these Hindu girls were put up in a small room, and she couldn't accept it. She was different, she couldn't accept it. So she raised her voice and she said that we want equal treatment, we want equal space, and we want a equal, clean and nice, big enough dormitory as you are providing to the other girls. They were put up in a very small room, which was very crowded and not comfortable. So to that, one of the teacher, she responded saying that women in your society, we are putting you in a godown. They were putting up the girls in a godown. So this teacher said that women in your society live such derogatory life, and you are complaining about this godown. Our godown is far better than the kind of life you would have led in your own village. So this really hit her hard, and she realized that that is not totally untrue, and she thought that we should do something about it. But then rebel. So a couple of biographies, 2 biographies states that because of her rebellion nature, she was asked to leave. But it is not so. Apparently, that the education in the mission school was only for 3 years. Beyond that, she has to go to another school. But she was already trained to be a teacher. So what she did was she was appointed as a temporary teacher in the Nagaon Primary Girls' School. So her professional life begins. And in the meantime, her younger sister also was accompanying her. She goes on to study medicine she goes on to study in Shillong, then medicine in Kolkata. She's also, by the way, considered as the first doctor, MBBS doctor in Assam. The biographies state that. So while she was teaching, her first professional position as an ad hoc teacher, as a temporary teacher in the Nagaon school, she started getting in touch with a lot of women in Nagaon, and she realized that there was emerging, there was some murmur which is going on about, about a samiti, about some kind of a Mahila Samiti. So she just jumped into the opportunity, and she's very good at mobilizing. So she mobilized, she mobilized funds and people in starting the school back in her village. So she had that skill. So she mobilized and she founded the Nagaon Mahila Samiti. Eventually, what happened was this happened in 1917. In 1918, this was a temporary position in Nagaon. In 1918, she was appointed as a headmistress of the primary girls' school. So an exclusive girls' school was founded in Tezpur, and she was appointed as a headmistress. So from here begins almost, the third phase of her life, which actually Tezpur lays the foundation of her political life, and how she emerged as a socio-political figure and a leader in the women emancipation in Assam. So she comes to Tezpur, and in Tezpur, she realized that there was already a Mahila Samiti. She had formed one in Nagaon. So in Tezpur, there was already a Mahila Samiti, and it was led by the mother of Jyoti Prasad Agarwala. Her name was Kiranmai Agarwala. But this Mahila Samiti was not vibrant. They were not able to do much. So initially, the Mahila Samitis, the main objective of Mahila Samitis was to educate girls. So that is a cause which really, resonated with Chandraprabha Saikyani. Okay, in between, I totally forgot to mention how her name from Chandrapriya became Chandraprabha. So her name was Chandrapriya Mazumdar. So when she was in the Nagaon mission school, her teachers, they were not very, familiar with the title Mazumdar, but they were familiar with title Das because they had come from Kolkata, trained from Kolkata and all. So because Chandra Priya and her sister Rameshwari were not sounding very modern, so they themselves turned it into Chandraprabha Das. It was not Saikyani as it was Chandraprabha Das. So her father was Mazumdar, but she started writing Das. That was the school records started, putting her name as such. Okay, coming back to Tezpur. So she comes to Tezpur, joins the school as Chandraprabha Das. Now, Kiranmai Agrawala, Jyoti Prasad's mother, she gets in touch with Chandraprabha, and Chandraprabha was very impressed by the ideas and thoughts of Kiranmai Agrawala, who was a very progressive woman for those days. And she thought that, let's get together and revive this Tezpur Mahila Samiti. So they did that, and Kiranmai was the chairperson, president, and Chandraprabha became the secretary. And in 1919, actually 1919 marked the turning point of Chandraprabha Saikyani in many ways. In 1919, they founded the Tezpur District Mahila Samiti. It was already founded, but they revived it, and it gave it a new avatar. Now, Tezpur District Mahila Samiti used to take up a lot of issues, used to work on widow remarriage, used to work on women's emancipation from all aspects. Like, for example, what it thought was, they said that, there was no parda system per se in Assam, but women used to not walk by foot. They used to always be carried, or, in those dolas, or they used to use the horse-driven carriages in the privacy. So that privacy was emphasized upon. But here they came about saying that women should walk. So women walking itself on the street, walking itself was some kind of it was symbolic of women empowerment. Next is, they spoke about economic empowerment. So what Chandraprabha did is, she spoke to that sewing machine company, Singer, and they got a machine to Jyoti Prasad Agarwala's house, where they actually taught women to, do machine stitching, and the importance of economic empowerment, importance of earning money for a woman. So this was going on. Her engagement in the school, her engagement in the Mahila Samiti, very actively. Simultaneously, what happened was, there was this Assam Student Conference which was gaining ground. So they wanted to organize the 4th conference in Tezpur. So in the same year. So they wanted, so Chandraprabha Saikyani was, at that time Chandraprabha Das, she was becoming popular in her grassroots engagements. So she was given the role of giving a speech. So this Assam Student Conference was working towards eradication of opium. So she was given the responsibility of giving a speech to youth on opium eradication. And she did, she made a terrific speech, and which casted a long-lasting impression on the people who were present there. And there were a lot of political leaders, there were a lot of other prominent personalities in the meeting. And she was 19 years old. This was in 1919. And she realized her own power as a public speaker, So she realized her talent as a public speaker, and this marked the beginning of her giving public speeches. At the same time, Assam Sahitya Sabha was also formed. So there are 3 institutions. One is the Mahila Samiti, then is the Assam Student Conference, third is the Assam Sahitya Sabha. And an annual conference was held in Borpeta. So she was again nominated to represent women. And there she used that platform to appeal to the personalities who were there, the leaders of Borpeta, Namghor, and the women and the public of Borpeta, requested them to, shed their discriminatory practices against lower caste and women. Women are still not allowed at Borpeta Namghor. So she was the one who started the discussion. At that time, she had not come in contact with Mahatma Gandhi. She was not so aware. That's what the biographies claim. She was not aware of about Gandhiji's crusade against untouchability. So this was something which was brewing in her mind, and she used that platform. Though it created certain ripples, but nonetheless, it did make a mark. So in 1918 also, there was this political group called Assam Association. So the discussion was going on regrouping the states. So the British was thinking of regrouping Assam with Bengal. So Gopinath Bordoloi and other leaders were vehemently opposing that. So they wanted a separate statehood for Assam. And in that meetings, she was given a very important role. So she played a very important role in representing women and carrying the voices of women to such a platform. In 1921, this happened in 1920, in the process. So when I was talking about the Assam Student Conference, so something very personal also happened in her life, which which actually impacted her in several ways. It became a strength and also it became a matter of weakness for her. But nonetheless, if in today's day and age, when we look back, we cannot help but marvel at her courage. What happened was in 1919, the Assam Student Conference, she gave the talk on opium eradication. That time she met this very young and vivacious, very, very energetic gentleman called Dondinath Kolita. Now, Dondinath Kolita was a writer and he was an excellent speaker, and he also, was very meritorious and was well known in those circles. So she fell in love with him. Now, Dondinath Kolita didn't want to marry. I mean, his family was not accepting her because she belonged to a lower caste than him. And he also failed to stand ground. He couldn't stand. And finally, they had to break up. But they had a very intimate relationship and she got pregnant. She conceived Dondinath Kolita's child. In 1920, I mean, 100 years back, a young girl who has come out in the open, and she was taking several radical steps in emancipating women. She becomes pregnant out of wedlock, and Dondinath Kolita, there are letters, in the biographies also. The writers have included letters where Dondinath Kolita has asked her to abort the child, but she refuses to do so, and she promises to raise the child to be a very good, promising citizen of future independent India, because by the time she had also gotten into the freedom struggle. But as a part of what happened was, because Dondinath Kolita was very, very very embarrassed by the entire thing, and he was worried about his own image and also her image. So what she did was she resigned from her position as a school headmistress in Tezpur and goes back to her village. And look at the broad-mindedness of her parents. They accepted her. They gave space to her. But from then she left. So she was in Tezpur only for 5 years. But those 5 years marked the beginning of her, of her image, what we see as of now. So she goes back to her paternal place, and there she gives birth to the child, and Atul, his name was, and along with the child, she participates in public meetings, in political picketings, and she is also imprisoned. So a lot of these political events are happening. In 1921, she meets Gandhiji. Gandhiji comes to Tezpur and she meets him, and she gets very highly influenced by the Gandhian thought. She participates in the non-cooperation movement very, very actively. In the meantime, these are two very personal things that happened in her life, and it was written out of the 4 biographies, it was written in one biography, but I thought it's important to mention that, what happened in between. Her father passed away, and her brother took over, as being the son, took over all the property and sold it off. And at that time, the property rights for women was not even thought about, because women, of course, gets married. That's her fate. But here in this case, she fought a court case. She filed a court case against her brother and managed to retrieve some of the property in hers and her sister's name. And at that point in time, she also, mobilized, she traveled to different districts along with her child to mobilize women. She was still a part of the Mahila Samiti. She was given the task of making a federation of the Assam Mahila Samiti. So she traveled far and wide. She traveled to different districts to form Mahila Samitis, to mobilize women to come to one platform. And she bought a cycle. And that cycle caught the ire of the people in her village, that she's trying to be too smart, arrogant. Cycle, who is a woman who rides a cycle? Apparently, some of the accounts said that she's the first woman in Assam who rode a cycle. And then eventually, she didn't have much money. Dondinath Kolita used to send 10 rupees to her and her son, and she lost her job also. So what she did is she started a business, and she started to run a city bus, a bus. And that was also unthinkable of, people cannot think of a woman owning a bus business. So she had one bus, a line bus, which used to run. And that was, so she chose this, this professions, or not particularly professions, the work also, it was so radical for those times and even in today's day and age. So this was happening till 1925, 26, 27. In 1927, she started, Dondinath Kolita was a writer par excellence. So he used to keep writing. So some of the writings, that is also, some scholars have mentioned that she wanted to respond to those writings. So she started writing in very popular magazines, very women-centric, writings. So she was, we can very confidently say that she was a feminist of those age in Assam, those days. So she was anyways associated with the Assam Sahitya Sabha. She contributed articles in Bahi, in Abahon. She started a magazine called Obhijatri. And there was this liberal newspaper in those days, which is called Ahomia. So Ahomia used to give space to, opinions on both sides. So she started writing in Ahomia newspaper. So there was one scholar, Budindranath Bhattacharya, which I want to mention here. So, and that piece which she wrote is still very relevant. So Budindranath Bhattacharya wrote a piece in Ahomia saying that, the piece is of course written in Assamese, I'm just very crudely translating it in English. So he said that there's no parda pratha in our society, in our Assamese society. And even if there is, what's the harm? Why do women in our society wants to mimic the West and become the meme sahibs, and want to just roam around freely? That is not the, that doesn't call for the true Assamese culture or the prestige of the family per se. So it's not a sign of good culture. That's what he said. And in response, she writes a very terrific piece where she says that, you mean to say that there's no parda pratha. I agree there's no parda pratha outrightly. Our women do not wear a, ghungat or a parda right here, what you see in several North Indian states. But labeling an 11-year-old girl as a dangar swali or as a grown-up girl or as a matured girl eligible for marriage, isn't it a part of a parda pratha? Or the very fact that women cannot walk freely out of their house or cannot travel freely from one place to another without the company of a male men, isn't that a part of the parda pratha? Such kind of questions, very uncomfortable questions she raised in her article. And she said that even if we want to, in the name of prestige or in the name of good culture, quote unquote, if we want to promote oppression of the fairer sex, it is not justified. So in several words, she conveyed this, and very beautifully she has written it in that article in Ahomia. And it's likewise, she wrote several other articles which left an everlasting impression on its readers. Eventually, after India gained independence, she also ventured into politics. By that time, her son had grown up, and she lost the elections. And several, write-ups say that she lost the elections because she didn't have a good impression in her own constituency, that is her home constituency, home district. People thought that she was too radical for them to digest, and she was not a good example. So much so that the tehsil in which her village belonged to, they didn't want to own her as their own. They were not proud of her, rather ashamed of her in many ways. So that those were the times. There's also some differences within the Congress party, which also is attributed to her defeat in the election. She was not a per se popular person, but of course her the work that she has done had tremendously contributed to women's empowerment and emancipation henceforth. Her son had eventually, he won the election. So she was alive then, and she could realize her dreams through her son in many ways. But she was also disillusioned because her idea of getting into politics was serving the society through, through a political power. Serving the society was her foremost agenda. But here she saw that several of her fellow leaders in the Congress and other political parties was failing to do so. So she was disillusioned also by the end of it. So in 1972, few months before her death, the government gave her the Padma Shri title and she was awarded the Padma Shri. And 72, on the same day, her birthday, 16th of March, she passed away. She had cancer. So this is her life sketch. I think I have surpassed the time, but what I'm trying to say is, at that time, you can imagine, the kind of challenges she must have felt in every decision that she took. Every decision was radical in those days. And still she stood ground, the kind of courage that she must have had. Now we are celebrating her, but during her days, I'm sure, people might have judged her in several different ways. And those factors, on those grounds on which she was judged, those grounds still exist. We still judge women on those grounds. So really, have we really progressed, or to what extent? That is something we need to discuss upon. So the 4 biographies that are written on her are, I'd just like to mention if anyone wants to read. One is Chandra Prabha by Anjali Sharma. The one very popular one is Mukti Hongrami Chandra Prabha, Hiranmoyi Devi. Then one is Agni Stata Chandra Prabha in 1998, Pushpalata Das. This is also a very well cited book. And the 4th is Chandra Prabha Hoykyani, Osyut Kumar Horma. But to begin with, if you're comfortable in Assamese, but again, this book is translated to English. This book I have personally read, so I thought, I realized it's a very good depiction of her life and her challenges, and a lot of learnings to get from it. Is the book Obhijatri, which is translated to English as well, by Nirupama Borgohain. So with this, I'd like to end my talk. I won't take, I think I've already taken more time. And since we have one more scholar here, so thank you, Pami. This is all from my end.
Thank you so much, Nawami. That was a wonderful talk that you have given us. We got to learn about this radical progressive figure who obviously rebelled against systemic discrimination. She spoke out against caste oppression, and she broke gender barriers. I think she's a perfect example of the resilience of women, to break against all the waves of opposition that came towards her. So once again, I thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So next we move forward to our final speaker, where she'll raise the question of women empowerment and how women can take critical role in conservation and sustainability development, which I think is the need of the hour. Like when we want to address issues and topics of equality, then we need to understand how women can also be involved in the processes where, especially since they play a critical, role as primary food givers, right? So I would like to introduce our last speaker, Jayashree Naiding, who is the First Lady, All India Service and Indian Forest Service Officer from the Dimasa community. She's currently posted as the Divisional Forest Officer, Territorial Sibsagar Division. Prior to this, she has served as the DFO in Golaghat Division, Lakhimpur Social Forestry Division, and Borgang Range in charge under Sunitpur East Division as well during her tenure as Assistant Conservator of Forest. She was also awarded the Balipara Foundation Rangers of Eastern Himalayas Award in 2016 for her contribution during her ACF tenure. She has served in hotbeds of human-wildlife conflict and has worked extensively towards conservation of indigenous tree species as well. Jayashree ma'am also enjoys traveling, trekking, and spending time with her dogs and cats. So I now request ma'am to share with us her, on her work as officer in forestry, as well as the contribution of women towards conservation. Thank you.
Thank you, Pami, for the introduction. And first of all, hello. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Jutai, and a good afternoon to all the participants. First, I would like to convey my thanks to the Dimasa Scholars League for inviting me to speak in this platform. I feel proud to belong to the land of Sengyajik Joya Thaosen and Rani Gaidilu, who contributed towards the freedom struggle movement of India. And now I would also like to convey my thanks to the former speakers, Dr. Ritu Thaosen, Dr. Nami Sharma, who gave insights into the contribution during their days for the freedom movement, and Srimati Prabha Saikia towards by her own way of contribution, by breaking the glass ceilings, or to say the societal barriers of her times. And this is my first opportunity where I'm getting to interact with the Dimasa youths of the times. And myself, since I have studied outside, and since I'm serving outside Dima Hasao, this is the first time I'll be interacting in this particular platform with the Dimasa youths. First of all, I would like to say that being a lady forester, my talk will mostly confine to the women who have contributed in their own way towards the forestry and the related sectors. And my talk will confine to four women and one women-driven movements related to conservation. Now I would like to share my screen for the PPT presentation. Okay, that's fine. Yeah. Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So I would like to start with the Chipko. See, in this particular talk, I would like to talk about the contribution of the different women who have contributed towards forestry in the garment sector, in the NGO sector as an individual, or those who have contributed towards creation of livelihood avenues in the fringe villages of forest areas, and definitely the women-driven conservation movement, that is a Chipko movement that happened that started in 1973, and which paved the way for such kind of conservation movements like the Akipo movement in Karnataka. And this Chipko movement was also a watershed in the conservation movements globally. First of all, I would like to talk about the rural women-led Chipko movement in Chamoli district. It was in the erstwhile UP state. Basically, this Chipko movement, this terminology came from the word Chipko. Chipko means embracing. So, in the early 1970s, there was massive logging, which was fueled by the infrastructure development needs of the UP government, and it led to massive logging of trees. And since women have been traditional providers of food, fuel, water, they observed some changes, and when there was a massive flood situation in Chamoli district, they thought of that they had to think that trees being the logging of trees, mass scale logging of trees has impacted their life in such a way. And that led to the start of the Chipko movement. And definitely the enabler of the Chipko movement is a male. Sundarlal Bahuguna. And I would also like to say that this particular Chipko movement was also inspired by an 18th century movement when the Vishnu community ladies led by Amrita Devi. It was also one such similar movement when the royals of the Jodhpur kingdom, they had ordered mass scale felling of trees for some developmental activities. Then this movement led by Amrita Devi also led to a royal decree where the the Jodhpur king that banned felling of trees. So we can say that here the Chipko movement definitely is a women movement, because here the simple I mean to say uneducated women's folk who came out in the open and spoke of their rights, and together they led a movement, and definitely it led to a conservation movement. And next, I would like to come to the second woman, that is Miss Rasila Wadhar. He's a rescuer forester, and she's a rescuer forester, and she serves in the Gujarat Forest Department. And I would like to introduce her here. Me being a forester, I have a soft corner towards frontline workers of the Forest Department, and I would like to share the contribution that she has given towards conservation efforts of the Forest Department. Since my audience belongs to non-forest, I would like to share the challenges that the frontline workers faces during their normal day-to-day duties. The most challenging field situation that our frontline workers, like the game watchers or the forest guards or the foresters, they face is the human wildlife or human wildlife conflict situation, be it in terms of leopard, be it in terms of elephant, or any other wildlife management issues which has people's interface. So basically, when we go for human wildlife mitigation, generally it is the humans which we need to manage, because the mob, the kind of crowd that surrounds the rescue team, that is the most difficult challenge that a forester in the field faces. So I would like to speak about Rasila Wadhar, who was one of the first 43 number of forest guards who were recruited in 2007 by the Gujarat Forest Department. And definitely, she being from a background of lower middle class, she has definitely broken the glass ceiling, and definitely I would say she came out of the comfort zone, and she has redefined courage. And I would like to say that from 2007 up till now, Miss Rasila Wadhar and her team of lady foresters, they are responsible for rescue of the figure I have, it's a little outdated, but still it is 1,100 wild animals, 400 leopards, 200 lions, and to add to this other dangerous wild animals. And we can proudly say that this particular team of foresters, they could succeed in all the rescue operations 100% with zero mortality of wild precious human lives as well as wild animals. And Rasila Wader definitely heads all women rescue team in Gir National Park. Gir National Park, it encompasses a huge landscape conservation, and definitely as a women who going into the territory of a male, where the kind of which is dominated by the males. Definitely he has come a long way, and she has broken the glass ceiling, and especially the societal norms. This challenging work done by the Rasila Wader and her team, she has been appreciated not only by the Gujarat Forest Department, but nationally and internationally also. Their work has become a topic of documentary series of Discovery Channel, and the entire team is known as the Lion Queens of Gir. Here, since I'm from a forestry background, here in this pictorial collage, I would like to show the challenges that this particular rescue forester faces. For example, in the second photograph, she enters a cage where she needs to be lowered into a well where a leopard has been trapped or fallen. So this shows the great courage, fierce attitude towards her work, which was earlier dominated by the males, or to say men. And he definitely she has contributed towards the image of women in society. And definitely women in North India and Western India, where the patriarchal mindset is always there, she has come a long way and invited name for herself as well as the nation, and it's worth emulating. Third, I would like to go to our very own Srimati Ppt Barua, the only lady Mahawat or elephant trainer of the world. Here I would like to introduce her, tell a little bit background about our Srimati Ppt Barua. She was born in the Zamindar family of Gauripur, erstwhile Dhubri district, and she would have chosen a life of comfort, being born into a zamindar family, but out of her interest and compassion for the gentle giants, that is the Asian elephant, she chose to work for the conservation of elephants, and her contribution towards the elephant conservation as an elephant Maho trainer, then her works towards human elephant conflict management, that is the taming of rogue elephants, that has also become the topic for this BBC documentary, Queen of the Elephants. Then I would like to say that definitely Srimati Ppt Barua, who is in her 60s, has definitely come out of the comfort zone. This is because of her sheer compassion towards the Asian elephant. And I would like to say that because of her contribution to elephant conservation, she has also been conferred the honorary Chief Elephant Warden by Government of Assam for her lifetime contribution. Srimati Ppt Barua, she has not only worked in Assam, but she was most sought after in the hotbeds of human wildlife conflict, like Jaldapara in West Bengal, Chhattisgarh, and Chhattisgarh in addition to Assam. And she She has led many expeditions of taming the rogue elephants. That is when the elephants, maybe they have gone on must. Then in addition to this, Srimati Parvati Barua also trains the Mahawats. And the latest her latest engagements being the invitation by the Chief Minister of West Bengal, and she trained the Mahawats recruited to the West Bengal Forest Department. Next, I would like to introduce Srimati Neera Sharma. Neera Sharma, in my talk today, I'm focusing on women from different backgrounds who have in their own way broken the glass ceilings and have come out of the comfort zone and contributed in a big way towards women emancipation, women empowerment, and also upliftment of the socioeconomic status of the women. Here, Neera Sharma, she was the wife. She was the wife of a garden manager, and she during her days in the garden, she noticed that the garden laborers, the ladies especially, they used to engage in destructive activities like felling of trees, cutting of trees for wood, firewood, etc. And even women in addition to men of the labor of the tea tribes engaging in alcoholism. And she had a hobby of handicraft using not only bamboos but other plant materials also. And I got an opportunity to interact with Neera Sharma during my tenure as Gulagat DFO, and I knew that being a woman who was born and who led a comfortable higher middle class life, she chose to work for the upliftment by training the people at the grassroots level, especially the women's, where livelihood avenues could be created from scratch. Maybe, for example, she is very Srimati Neera Sharma. She's famous for the 1 bamboo 1 lakh rupees model in Tripura. And the kind of intricacy, the kind of beauty that she creates from a simple bamboo plant, and she has not confined her talent to herself. She is most sought after by various state governments of India for training master trainers or the fringe villagers of the reserve forest in various state forest department. And it is a known fact that she shares dais with all the bamboo experts and in different platforms in anything related with livelihood connected to bamboo. Here, the picture itself speaks the bamboo lady engrossed in training rural folk in bamboo craft. And I would like to say here that she is a lady with simplicity, and I have even seen or heard about her living in a remote Meghalaya village where there's no connectivity or like any water facilities. And definitely she has made a name for herself and in the field of creating livelihood avenues for the grassroots. Next we are coming to Purnima Devi Burman. She is the winner of the Whitley Award 2017, and also which is also known as Green Oscars, and the Nari Shakti Awards in the same year. Now, Purnima Devi Burman, she's a biologist from Aranyak, and she has worked extensively for specific species, that is greater adjutant stork, which is known as Hargila. Hargila, it is a scavenging bird, and basically in the when she was a PhD student, she visited the rural Kamrup area, mainly the other area, and to her and it was a shock to her that this particular bird, which had such an important ecological role was detested by the Assamese community, and it was detested, and added to that, it was considered as ill omen or dirty, like that. So we can say that Purnima Devi Burman, out of her selfless efforts, she mobilized the entire Assamese community, basically the rural women folks of Kamrup, rural Kamrup. Here I would like to say that greater adjutant stork, the nesting occurs in tall trees like semal, tall trees like kadam. So she observed that the nesting activities of these birds were affected due to mass-scale felling of the tall trees. And so her first concern was how to stop the tree felling, which affected the population of the birds. So here she involved the women folks, and it was in her own unique way. She involved the community through introduction of handloom weaving, for example, Namsa weaving, by incorporating greater adjutant motifs, and also in namgars while singing the Namgeet. And for all the initiatives she had taken, in 2006-2007, she recorded very few. She recorded only 15 nests in the rural Kamrup area. Now, post conservation initiatives, I mean to say, women oriented conservation initiative, 171 nests have been observed in the same area. And because of the initiatives of all the female team of Purnima Devi Burman, the entire team is known as the Hargila Army. And I have already spoken that for conservation efforts of Purnima Devi Burman, she has been recognized, and she was conferred the Whitley Award or Green Oscar in 2017. Definitely, her conservation efforts has led to the prevention of felling of tall trees like semal, then kadam, and it has paved a way where the greater adjutant stork population could increase. Here, the three pictures depicts the community participation in the conservation efforts of Purnima Devi Burman. In today's talk, I wanted to showcase the contribution of women from diverse backgrounds. For example, the Chipko movement was driven by the simple rural women folk. Then the conservation initiatives of Purnima Devi Burman of the current times. And I would like to say here that given an opportunity, women are at par to their male counterparts and excel in each field they choose. And equal opportunity for daughters and sons in every aspect of upbringing, it definitely paves a way towards upliftment of the society as a whole. And definitely definitely breaking the societal norms, as the earlier speakers have spoken. Dr. Thaosen and Dr. Sharma, they have already spoken about breaking the societal norms, the obstacles given from the society. Now we definitely need to think that as in terms of allowing daughters to choose their field of work, keeping aside the go zone or no go zone. And I would like to end my talk by saying that the Masa community, even though it is an egalitarian society, I feel that we can go a long way and contribute towards social change, I mean to say, we can go a long way towards upliftment of the Masa society as a whole. And definitely walking out of the comfort zone, then thinking of that this is a go zone area, or choosing career in the comfort zone. Why not walk out of the traditional career options? I feel that the Masa society can definitely, since we already belong to an egalitarian society, can contribute a lot. Thank you, Jutta.
Thank you so much, Jayashree ma'am. I think what we take away from here is how women are increasingly taking on responsibilities in use of land resources as well as biodiversity conservation in today's times. Right? It also makes us reflect on the question of like equality when it comes to decision making as well, like especially when it comes to access of those resources and how women could participate in decision making. So I think from your presentation, one thing is very certain, that the more we include women in forest management as well as in conservation, perhaps it could result in better resource governance as well as conservation as well, right? So thank you so much, ma'am. We have come to the end of today's program, but before we conclude, I would like to take a few moments of your time to make a short announcement. So it gives me great pleasure to also announce that Anuj Hagjar, who's a member and secretary of Dimasa Scholars League in collaboration with Mishi Taekwondo Guwahati, has taken the initiative to organize free self-defense workshop for women every Sunday for the next coming months of November and December in Haflong, the details of which will be shared on our social media profiles. Because of the current situation in our society and the rising crimes against women, this self-defense course is primarily aimed at building confidence. It will provide tips and tricks to safeguard oneself, especially during emergency and dangerous situations. So this talk, of course, wouldn't have been possible without our three speakers who graciously accepted our invitation and request on such a short notice, despite their very, very busy schedule. I am grateful to Ritu ma'am and Namami, Jayashree ma'am for their presence, their enthusiastic support, and their enriching talks and deliberations on the topic. I also want to take this opportunity to express my gratitude to my colleagues and friends in the Dimasa Scholars League for their contribution in making this talk a successful one. So our president, Rakhi Naiding, vice president, Shivraj Khemprai, Gensec, Dr. Monali Longmailai, then our secretary, Anuj Hagjar, and our conveners, Dr. Humi Thaosen and Dr. Sabina Langthasa. I want to thank them for their timely help and coordination as well. And of course, finally, a big thank you to all the members of DSL and the audience for being with us today. And we hope to see your participation again for our upcoming programs. Thank you, Jutai.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pami. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pami.